Welcome back to the Gun Collective podcast. My name is John Patton, and boys and girls, it's going to be a fun night. First, huge shout out to TACPAC and our TGC Patreon supporters for making this show possible. That's how we do things around here. We make things possible with sponsorships. Tonight, we are going to dive into the topic of infighting. This is something that's been going on a lot over the last, 2 years almost in the gun community as tensions start to grow and pressure from anti-gunners seems to become higher. Oddly enough, on state and federal level, we're under more scrutiny than we ever have been before. And it seems though our community is sort of turning in on itself. It's a very dangerous thing that's happening. And it's a topic that I think we need to explore and try and understand a little bit more and maybe push back the other direction. Tonight, I'm going to have some help doing that. I'm joined by a man that loves drama more than food. Johnny Bragg is here. Johnny, how are you, man?
I'm doing fantastic tonight. If I was doing any better, I would not be able to sit still. Thanks for having me.
Are you able to sit still ever?
I'm just glad to be here with you fellas. Well, two of the three of y'all I'm happy to be with, but I'm gonna sort some stuff out tonight with the other one.
We're gonna infight. So much infighting. I'm also joined by a guy that wakes up every day to the Saved by the Bell theme song. Everybody say hey to We Like Shootings, Shawn Herring.
Hello. I was actually trying to look for that, but I couldn't even find a copy of it just so I could hear what it sounds like and set it up.
Why don't you sing it for us?
Yeah.
I couldn't find it.
You couldn't?
Sean still uses a Zach Morris cell phone. I've seen it.
I do. It's a flip phone.
He couldn't find it on his Zune.
Dude, best media player ever.
Oh, sure it was. Right behind the nothing. And rounding us out tonight, someone that I heard was going to try and buy stock in Benchmade knives. Kurt Sills is here.
Hey, yeah, I love making really poor decisions.
Oh, man. Kurt, how are you, man? You good?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
I'm pumped to have you here. I think what is going on over there, Sean? I think what we need to do is kind of start off like we did last time when we talked about money and various other topics. We need to define what we're talking about, right? We need to set that bar. So what is infighting? Johnny, what do you consider infighting in our community?
I think the question begins with what is a community? We are a community, and it's fascinating that we've got Democrats and Republicans and independents and all sorts of people that all love guns. So we rally around. Our community starts and ends with the Second Amendment. And so that is our community, infighting within it. Anytime you get people together, as soon as we came out of the trees swinging like monkeys, we made campfires. We started throwing rocks at each other. It's the first thing we did as soon as we got opposable thumbs, or at least 3 of the 4 of us tonight. And infighting is any time that we are slinging rocks at each other. And right now within the 2A community, now our worlds are a little bit heavy in social media, but people throwing barbs back at each other, some justified and some unjustified.
And I think it's really interesting how you defined, the fact that we are way bigger than a lot of people think. When most folks think about the gun community, they think about nothing but conservatives, right? That's what they're like. Oh, it's a Trump supporter. It's a libertarian, things along those lines, right? But we are far bigger than that. And because we differ in so many different ways, we tend to look inward and point at why we're all different. Kurt, do you think that the gun community's growth over the last, 2 to 5 years has caused more of this?
I mean, everything grew. So not only did the gun community grow, but social media grew. And I think that's really important because that's where all of this is happening really fast. I mean, that's where companies are being burned to the ground before the PR guy even gets a phone call knowing that it happened. Like we saw maybe a little bit last night. I mean, I think there's a ton of factors that but the main ones is, the growth of the gun community. I think the average age of the gun community has gotten younger. I don't know. I don't have data to back that up. That's just a feeling. And then, obviously the growth of social media, the ability to exchange ideas and information really quickly is going to allow people to have a platform to go and fight with each other.
Yeah, and speaking of that sharing of information, Shawn, can you give me some kind of examples as to where you tend to see infighting the most?
You know, that's a good one. It's definitely all the internet, but I think I see infighting amongst like content creators probably the most, because that's the echo chamber that I'm in. That's kind of the people that I have on my social media and friends list and things like that. If that's what you meant, that's kind of my answer is social media as a mechanism, but very much content creators as a subgroup of a subgroup.
Sure, sure. And I think that in large part comes from our own insecurities and our desire to be the king of the hill. We all of us content creators in some fashion want to be the top, really. Let's be fair, the top of whatever mountain we're trying to stand on. And I think that leads to people trying to find weaknesses within the other people. And it's effing dangerous to do, because what that means is that as we progress, if we're out there slinging mud at these other people, well, then we are either A, letting our guard down on the other direction, which is exactly why I wanted to talk about this, and B, we're just wasting our effing time. Just wasting our time talking about, well, this person, I don't agree with how they do this. I don't agree with this, so F them as a person entirely, burn them to the ground. That seems to be the culture that we're fostering. If we don't agree, burn it to the ground. If we don't agree, burn it to the
well,
effing
I don't know
ground.
I don't know that that's mutually exclusive to the firearms industry. I think that
I'm not sure it is either.
I'm saying I think that might be social media in a whole, because of the anonymity of it. It allows people to be more aggressive with those conversations. And I think that can lead to more people trying to burn each other to the ground or saying stuff that they probably wouldn't say to other people's faces. But I don't know. Like, is the gun industry worse? I don't know. It might be.
Well, I think due to the pressures that we're feeling, we are under attack every single day.
That's true.
We are being told every single day that we're wrong for what we believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. So I've talked about this fundamental human trait where if you feel like you've been told you're wrong, you dig in harder. That's a natural thing. And I think that is why we tend to lash back and freak the F out and scream Molon Labe. Johnny, in your day-to-day, you tend to deal with a wide variety of ages of people. Wide variety in general of people. Do you notice in your day-to-day a certain age group fighting more or throwing mud more than another? Do you think the social media age has fostered that?
I think what Shawn that just said, that what the anonymity is what I think fosters a lot of it. I do not see a correlation by age, because you can have a bunch of old 1911 loving Vietnam vets just going at it in the comment section, and you can have moron kids that aren't even old enough to own a gun that are going at it as well. I don't see it as a age thing. Here's what I do see it as, and research does show that male-oriented communication, males tend to rank things. There's only top 10 lists for NFL quarterbacks. There's no top 10 lists for softest sweaters down at the mall. And so males are always about the ranking. They are. It's true. And guys talk about this. They're always saying, what's the best? What's the worst? Oh, man, Papa John's is just nasty pizza. And Domino's is the best. No, they're all kind of cheese and bread. And I think that's the big one. And to your point, which is just instantly burn people to the ground. This company's garbage. This person's garbage. A creator hollered at me late last night. And he said, what's going on with this whole Benchmade thing? And we talked a little bit, and he goes, I'm calling them all out, every channel that won't deal with this. And I told him, I said, not every channel is political. They have lanes that they stay in. When we mentioned a couple educator channels, I mentioned Plinkster. He's a trick shooter and a hunter. He does really well at that. And he goes, no. Anybody, he said, I'm calling them out, and I'm going after them if they won't succumb to my agenda. And I think it's less of a age thing. And maybe that does have something to do with it, but I think it's primarily a gender thing. It's dudes.
That's interesting. And you touched on something that I think is so interesting. You and we complain about it all the time. You know, the anti-gun community is out there trying to force us to live their way. But here we are within our own community doing exactly that. Doing exactly that. We are making videos and making memes and harassing people to the point of where they quit their jobs and things of that nature, right? They change the way they live because we are trying to force our way of life, our belief structure on them. Holy crap. This is terrifying to me. The fact that we can do this and not even realize it.
Yeah. I got to be honest here, guys. Like, for those listening, like, what you may not realize is that Outrage is a product. Outrage is something that people have begun to sell as their product. Like that, I can honestly tell you. So I always use the high point parable when I talk about social media things. Like, I can post a cool picture of a gun, and a certain group of people, a certain niche, will see that picture and like that picture and comment on that picture, and it helps raise that picture. But when I post a picture of a high point, there's people who feel very strongly for high points and people who feel very strongly against high points. But it brings everyone out together, and then they sit and they bicker, and I watch my insights go through the roof, which raises us in the algorithm and helps things. So if you see me post a picture of a high point, it's because I noticed that, you know, things were dragging just a little bit. But what that really tells me is that the Outrage is absolutely a product. It's absolutely a way to raise up through you know, just a myriad of different content sources out there. And guys, Outrage, it's become a product that a lot of people are selling very well.
I would say Gillette just used it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we need to also just keep that in mind when we talk about this. Like, yeah, there are people who genuinely feel the way that they feel, but we also have to remember that some people saw that it raised their numbers, and that's become what they sell and what they record.
Yeah, I think you're definitely on to something there. You know, and one of the things I want to make sure before we start diving into the weeds, I want to make sure that people at home understand, people in the car. If you're out there in the car listening, shoot me an email and say, hey. So I want it to be important and people understand how this hurts us, right? So what are we as a community trying to accomplish? We, in large part, are trying to fight back against the anti-gun onslaught, right? That's our primary. We are trying to maintain our rights, okay? And if we are doing nothing but bickering, that's a great word for it, bickering amongst each other, we're not paying attention. We're so worried about creating the next fire meme that gets 100 and some odd likes or whatever the hell it is on social media. We're so worried about that we forget that we should be doing some other stuff. We need to be investing our time in other directions. I think it's a detrimental thing. Kurt, is there anything that you think this does besides hurt us against anti-gunners? Is this detrimental to consumers? Does this help or hurt businesses out there?
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I think one of the things it does besides hurt us is I think it helps us. I think that there's a pretty solid argument to be made that that the gun industry may, or our community may need to make sure we have a clear argument when it comes to certain things, and certain things won't be tolerated. Now, obviously, there's things that we are not going to tolerate and the entire gun community will not tolerate. And then that, you know, that's one end of the spectrum. And then on the other end of the spectrum is, you know, the other end of the extreme, which is things that most of the gun industry doesn't care about, but a few people go crazy for. Well, we all fall somewhere in on that spectrum. But I mean, I think that there's a lot of good that can be done by having these conversations. And I think the goals and the general feelings of the gun community have changed over the past 10 years because of these conversations. I mean, a lot of stuff that most people didn't care about, like the NFA and how ridiculous that is. Like, those things weren't as talked about before, but now they're commonplace. It's common for us to talk about it, and it's common for people in our community to dislike the NFA and to try to fight against it. So I think that the infighting can actually evolve the conversation a little bit, and in certain cases will end up better for it.
So in that way, somebody left a comment out here on the live stream, and I want to bring it up because I think it's an important way for us to start this discussion of some examples of how this is going down. So the comment is from a viewer out here named Crackpot, and he's out there watching all the time, and I appreciate it. He actually left a super chat, and it says, "You are either with us or a FUD." Now, I want to talk about this FUD thing. Okay, there is this you're either with us or against us, and that's absolutely not true. It's not true. There are varying levels, like Kurt said. There's a spectrum, right? We all fall somewhere in there, and to pretend like you are not a real gun owner if you don't support exactly, like, for instance, this is something that really is a thorn in my side. When everybody out there, when I should say, when people take the time to say something like repeal all gun laws are unconstitutional, you are a dipshit because you have a driver's license and you're sitting there screaming about how we need to repeal all the gun laws back to 1776. Meanwhile, you've got a government issued ID. Shut the hell up. This is 2019. We're dealing with 2019 problems. We can't even get state law stuff stopped. And you're talking about repeal them all as if that's going to happen.
They're not wrong. It's just not how the world works, right?
Exactly. I don't want these effing gun laws, but wasting your time talking about how we have to repeal the NFA is being incredibly short-sighted and wasteful of your own time. Johnny, any thoughts there?
What did the dude say to Walter Sobchak in the immortal documentary, The Big Lebowski? He said, Walter, you're not wrong, man. You're just an asshole. And excuse the language. I'm sorry about the language. I really am. And y'all know I'm not a big cusser, but the deal is that whole, my God, repeal it all. Like, you're done. Like, you don't even know. And the place that you're even typing that and you're in a gun channel typing that, these walls of text that mean nothing. Here's what's irony. In a video where we're talking about infighting, there's already names being slung in the comment section. Somebody's like, "Oh, all those soy boys out there," or "all you FUDs out there." And I say those things too. And I think we all need to be mindful of this, just these blanket statements. I would love to just get a meter going and just get the average, like get about 1,000 gun viewers together and just start saying names. Just channels Hickok, and then watch the names go up. Paul Hellman, the names go up. Grand Thumb, Dad Platty, we love him forever. And all of these names, because we have these blanket statements over these entire channels, when, to your point, John, it's on a spectrum. Nobody's got all truth locked down. There's not one perfect channel that's towing the line perfectly, and there's no channel that's a complete and utter disaster.
Well, to pretend like, there's an example that you brought up earlier of somebody that is apolitical in their stuff, but features gun content. For instance, Demolition Ranch. I will name drop him because he's a perfect example of this. People in the gun community, I see it all the time. Why doesn't he take a stand? Why doesn't he take a stand? He doesn't need to. In my eyes, Matt takes a stand by creating content about guns. He is normalizing firearms for a huge amount of people. And whatever way he chooses to do that, as long as he's being safe and as long as he is a good representation of firearms owners as a whole, having fun, I think it's an important part to play. Pretending like everybody needs to grab the same pitchfork Everybody needs to do the exact same thing when there are multiple jobs within every company in order to move forward.
But those guys that are grabbing the pitchforks, what are they doing? They're just typing into YouTube videos and or canceling their NRA membership. Even those guys, half of them aren't doing anything. They're just going from YouTube comment to Instagram comment, whining and crying and copying and pasting in walls of text. And then those other guys, a guy mentioned to me last night, he mentioned a big YouTuber. And he's like, that guy does nothing. And I'm like, well, he promotes guns and makes guns really cool. Plus, I know for a fact he stands in the rain on Saturdays down at his state courthouse or his state, wherever the state people, they do their protests. And he does stuff on the grassroots level. But because he's not vocal, people are upset about it. And it's just, it's frustrating, I think is the right word.
Sure. We've got a couple more super chats here I want to read out, because I think this discussion that's happening live is kind of tandem with what we're talking about. Cody May says, the problem with FUDs is that we respect their decision to only carry FUD guns, but they don't respect our decision to what guns we want to own. I think that's a fair point. I think that kind of Elmer Fudd type personality, I think that's a fair point. And this, obviously I don't think this discussion, this podcast is going to reach the type of people that are like that. I don't think that we have that type of audience. However, I think it's important to acknowledge the shortcomings on both sides, and that is certainly one. There's a thick old boys mentality in the gun community. I've experienced it myself. I got tossed out of a gun club because I was shooting too fast. I'm no longer a member at a gun. This was, 8 years ago. I'm no longer a member of a certain local club because I shot too fast, and they thought it was a machine gun. I showed them, hey, it's a Geisley, and they were upset about it, even though there was no rules against rapid fire. I understand that mentality entirely. Michael Getch, another super chat here. Thanks for that, brother. You don't have a right to drive. You do have a right to bear arms, just like you have a right to free speech without needing a license to do so. You're missing my point. The point of saying we have a government-issued ID is that you are trying to repeal everything back 200 years, right? You're trying to go back to when this country was founded, and you're complaining about the government. But here you are with something from the government that gives you permission to do things in the states. It's very, very ironic. That's my point. It has nothing to do with the right to bear arms, because I agree with you. You don't have a right to drive. It's not in the Constitution because cars weren't around. I get it. Shawn, what do you think about this kind of FUD versus meme lord versus whatever? I've commented about this on social media. I don't know if you've dove into that topic. What do you think about this anti-FUD mentality that's out there?
This is a tough one, and I've definitely thought a lot about this. I think that the term FUD is interesting. I mean, we clearly all know FUDs, right? Like, the old guys that kind of sit down at the gun store and with their revolver on their hip and things like that. And they don't care about AR-15s and they don't care about gun rights or anything else. But those guys generally are the ones who respond to doom and gloom marketing. The anti-gunners are coming to take your gun. So they'll send $10 here, $10 there and do stuff like that. But I think in response to that, because we feel so unlistened to, that we have become like this new brand of FUD. And we've talked about this in some of my listener groups, which we call like a neo FUD, or we coined them the Marvin, because it's like the opposite of a FUD, but it's
just, that's actually really interesting. Keep going.
The Marvin. So we go so far in this other direction that we become exactly what a FUD is, just on the exact opposite part of that spectrum. Like, bottom line, we need gun owners to kind of work together. Now, my grandpa, like, that dude's never going to be like AR-15s are great, right? He grew up hunting, and I'm never going to change his mind. I'm never going to. It's never going to happen. I get that. But there's a lot of people who aren't so entrenched in their life and their experience, and that's on both sides. I figure if we can kind of meet somewhere in the middle, we'll be a little bit better off. But you don't battle extremism by becoming an extremist. I feel like we need to kind of meet somewhere in the middle, figure out who we can actually talk to, figure out who we can help, and meet somewhere there to be really, truly effective.
And I think part of that is, something that I think we as content creators have a responsibility to do, and that is be leaders within the community. If we want to stand on top of the mountain, we must lead from the front, right?
Yeah, we delved into this a while back. Last year sometime, I don't remember exactly when, Tim from Military Arms Channel kind of had come out and said people aren't doing enough. People that have audiences and things aren't doing enough. And, you know, I respected that message. I was like, you know what? I wonder if that's true, because We Like Shooting is not known for, you know, fantastic commentary or things like that. We're known for being entertainers and making people laugh and stuff like that. So we spent almost an entire episode talking about it. Like, do we, as people with an audience, have a responsibility to stop doing what it is that we do that made people like us and start worrying about, or start pivot and start talking about politics, something that we're clearly not necessarily qualified to talk about or to offer commentary on? Like, we all have opinions, right? But do we stop doing the thing that it is that we actually do and that we're good at, and start doing this other thing because it's important? We came to the conclusion that it's probably best if we stay in our lane, which is interesting. I say that because I freaking hate that term. But I guess it's very interesting. Kurt, what are your thoughts on that whole thing?
So I own a business. So I obviously I'm not one of the content creators here. I'm a product creator, if you will. But I guess a point that I would like to make is that I think it's important for everyone to do something. Maybe that's not your only thing, but I think you can do both. Everyone can do a little of both. I think you can be like, if you look back at Blue Alpha Gear is my business. If you look back at our social media, there's very, very little politics on it. I tend to try to avoid it. But we are very involved, just not necessarily in the posts that we make. There's stuff going on behind the scenes that we're pretty involved in. But I guess the message I want to say is that anyone who has any sort of influence and power should try to do something. And I think if everyone's doing something, we can kind of like, I don't know, I'm having a hard time explaining it. We can push the conversation in the direction that we want. So
the question then becomes, what is that something?
Well, that's the thing is I guess it depends. But I think, you know, I could probably explain it better if there were specific scenarios, and I could give you do this versus do that. But we try to be involved, and I think everyone should be involved.
Well, you guys made a somewhat political statement.
Right, we did.
By bailing from the NRA annual meetings.
Right. So, yeah, so we did that just because we canceled our booth at the NRA show, us and Coltac. And we did that because we just kind of felt dirty about having a booth there. We were pretty disappointed in the behavior of the NRA, and we really didn't want to give them any more money unnecessarily. And it freaked me out. And then so we took that money and we donated it to the Firearms Policy Coalition, which is actually, this is the shirt I'm wearing right now, is a Firearms Policy Coalition shirt, because I'm really passionate about that organization and what they're doing. And it turned out that kind of caught fire and inspired some other people. And then, you know, eventually I ended up on page 3 of the Wall Street Journal because of it, which was very,
so that is
crazy.
Your version of doing something. You took a stand. Now, there's a comment out here that I want to get to. Crackpot, we'll get to your comment in just a second. But I think the point you're making is very interesting. The point of everybody doing something is good. I agree with you. I think everybody should do something, but I don't think that other people should dictate what that something is for everybody else. I think if we are arrogant enough to say, hey, you should do what I say, it falls back to that same thing we started with, right? If we are so arrogant to believe that we are going to dictate what somebody else, like we are going to say, Matt from Demo Ranch, you have to go, you know, make a political video. I think Shawn was absolutely onto something by saying we should stay in our lane. I think you can do other things to inspire people, to encourage people, to move the change forwards without making these huge political statements and rants and and creating these de facto gun rights organizations through your own social media, I don't think that's a necessity in order to move things forward. We at TGC remain somewhat neutral. I mean, I'm still going to NRAM because that's where the fans are, and that's what matters to me. And
we're going to, we're just not having a booth.
Good point.
So,
good point. That's good to know. I think people need to know that.
Yeah.
But the comment here is from Crackpot in the comments. It says, the problem is not those that don't actively fight gun laws, but the ones that endorse them like the NRA does with red flag laws. See Chris Cox. Okay. So while I agree with that, I think screaming about the NRA specifically and saying burn them to the ground when they are literally the biggest shield we have. They are the biggest shield we have. Saying burn them to the ground and then just let those people come walking. Imagine the way I visualize things, right? I think about this like Game of Thrones, when the freaking the White Walkers are trying to come through and there's this wooden wall and they're just punching the F through it. That's what's currently happening. The NRA is the wall. Whether we agree with the wall or not, it's still a wall.
Swiss cheese wall.
Yeah. They have effed up left and right. I have publicly said, and I screamed about it last week, I've publicly said that I disagree with the leadership of the NRA currently. But to tear down the wall ourselves and let those assholes come in, we are screwing ourselves harder than we could ever imagine. Johnny, any thoughts on that analogy?
Bum 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 bum.
We all want to think we're Littlefinger, but I have a feeling that gun people are starting to look a little bit more like Ned Stark.
Yeah, I don't watch. I don't get that reference.
It was so good, though.
It wasn't bad. Not bad.
How could you not watch? Get out.
Yeah,
I'm dictating that you go watch that show.
Yeah,
I got things. I got kids in a business.
I got a business.
I think what's interesting is, and I know Shawn said he didn't like this term, but he said that stay in your lane. There's a I don't know if it's called an ideology or just a thought or a mind picture from the Christian New Testament that talks about the body of Christ, and I think that's an easy analysis. But it says that some people are the ears, some are the eyes, some are the hands, some are the feet. There's different parts, but together they're one body. And what's interesting is Kurt says, no, we all should do something. But then he said we should do it in our own way, and I think we're pretty much in agreement that we should do something. But yeah, and again, I think some people say it one way, some say the other. I think the problem is when it goes all the way to the other direction of, again, burn the NRA to the ground, and I think that's just unfortunate. And the people are going to get mad. You can say anything positive about the NRA, and people get upset. Kurt, you trying to say something?
I mean, if we're going to bring up Jesus, he also said, do not be lukewarm. And I feel like that's one of the actual problems we have is we have a lot of lukewarm people when it comes to the Second Amendment. And when everyone is lukewarm or a lot of people are lukewarm, that's going to weaken us.
Well, let me ask you this. My pop, who's the best guy ever, 72 years old, lives in Boones Creek, Tennessee. He probably buys one gun every 3-4 years. But here's how he participates in the 2A community. He buys me a lot of ammo for Chris all gifts. He's a member of the NRA and he supports the local gun shops a lot. What else could he do to be white hot?
I mean, well, he's probably not in a lot of locations that you could have if he's not on the internet a lot, he probably can't have an impact there. So that rules out that. Obviously the polls and, through elections, I'm sure he's helping us there.
Active.
Yeah. So the problem with that person, potentially, if we were, that person who, if there was like an assault weapons ban, what do you think he would do?
I think he would write our congressman. I think he would email congressman.
So he would be, because there's a lot of people out there that are pro 2A, but they would be okay with an assault weapons ban.
Oh no, he'd be on fire. He'd be upset.
Then he's good.
He'd cock his hat back. When that hat goes back, buddy, I'm telling you what, it's the way it is.
The people I'm concerned with are the ones that are okay with the assault weapons ban or something like that. No. They are pro 2A, quote unquote. The I believe in the Second Amendment, but people. Any of those, you gotta watch out for the butt people.
if we're talking about the analogy of the body of Christ, I don't consider myself a religious person, but I'll roll with that analogy. Are those people that you're referring to the skin flakes, the Second Amendment butt? Are they just like the people that are falling off? How's that work? Where do they fall in? That's I'm saying. Like if we're going to use this analogy, it's like the infighting would be the nose telling the feet what to do.
Every living organism has bowel movements regularly.
And now we're talking about we like shooting. Great.
I think my earlier point that I want to make is I suspect there's a lot more people like my dad who would lose their mind over assault weapons, but he's not on YouTube and he's not ticky-tacking away. And I think there's a lot of him and his Vietnam vet aged buddies.
I'll tell you what, he's probably doing more good for the Second Amendment in this country by actually being involved than, the top 7 meme lords on the internet.
That cuts deep.
I disagree with that. I think the meme lords are obviously some of the most extreme when it comes to the conversation. I think they do have their place. I think that there's a lot of young people who are new to the Second Amendment who end up following them, and those guys are going to do a hell of a lot to make people really passionate and kind of like guide them onto what actually is important. What are we trying to fight back against? And I think they absolutely have their place. I think there has to be a group of people that can call other people out. I mean, that's why like comedy is so important in general to society. Comedy, satire, all those things are important because people have to have a way to get their point across, to call other people out and use a voice. And obviously those guys are like anonymous, right? So you can hate people that are anonymous that are talking crap about somebody else, but when someone is anonymous, it makes it a lot easier for them to actually say their true feelings. And I think that there's value in someone saying their true feelings exactly as they feel it, unfiltered. And I think the meme lords do have a place.
I think they have a place, Kurt, but here's my point is that going to change.org and filling out a survey and posting on Facebook about how you're mad about the recreational outrage of the day is great. But if you wrote a letter to your senator, it would do a hell of a lot more in the actual guiding of policy in this country. And I think you're right in a lot of ways. And Kurt and I actually, we agree on a lot of things and we disagree on a lot of things. And we talk about this stuff pretty regularly. And here we are still friends. In fact, we argued for a good while this morning, but it was good.
I'm right about stuff. Sean is wrong about stuff, but somehow we managed to stay friends.
Exactly. It's so easy once everyone accepts that. But
yeah,
I think that we get so ensconced in thinking that shouting from our living room makes a difference. And it just doesn't. We get so lazy. And yes, it may guide some of those people, some of the younger generation, but they're also historically not voting in the same numbers that the older generation votes in. And sure, we may guide that policy now, but unless they get off their butts and actually become activists, I worry about the future.
Well, right, I mean, a lot of them are raising money. So there's something there. I mean, they are literally raising money for the Firearms Policy Coalition. And you can't deny that that money is being pretty well used. It's going directly to lawyers who are fighting against anti-Second Amendment policies. So
it's a good point.
That's a positive thing. That's absolutely a positive thing. And, if we are in agreement that everybody has their role, then I think even the extremists within the extreme, the meme lords and the FUDs all have their place, arguably. And speaking of FUDs and organizations full of them, let's talk about the NRA for a second. And I don't want to sit here and wax political, right? That's not what we are about to do. What I want to talk about is the aura that comes with discussing or being at all associated with the NRA, a la Hickok 45 and Colion Noir. We before we started here, we spoke specifically about the attacks on Colion Noir around the time of the bump stock ban really rearing its head again, right? Because, and I think we were in agreement here that he was fairly silent about it. He didn't come out and full force in the other direction. And while I don't know, and he's not here to speak on that, I think it's very interesting that somebody that has literally spent a large portion of the last 10 years of his life pushing to get new gun owners and young gun owners enthusiastic about it, suddenly they've now created effigies and lit him on fire. That is what I call infighting, and that is a waste of our damn time. Johnny, go ahead.
Here's the deal. I think you alluded to it a little bit earlier. Most people who have jobs now, Shawn comes from a Fortune 50 company or Fortune 10 company. John, you worked in the tech side of a Fortune 500 company. Kurt works in business. I work within structure. When you work in a structure like that, you have to filter your thoughts. You're always thinking about, where does this fit? Every email that gets sent, you think through this. You are not autonomous. Every single content creator are so autonomous. They're such an island. They say what they want and burn them to the ground. And we forget that Colion Noir is an employee of the NRA. And when you are at your job, you don't burn your employer to the ground. I'm not defending Colion Noir. I don't even watch him that much. I'm a little jealous of his flat-brimmed hats. I don't even care that much. But I think part of it, before we even have this, is to remind ourselves that's his job, to toe the line.
It's a weird place to be. I think because of where he came from and him having his own brand, I think people often think that he should be, or they want him to be, more often than not. I think that's the thing. People are projecting what they want out of somebody. They want that person to be screaming from the rooftops, down with X, Y, or Z. And when that doesn't happen, they freak the hell out. And I think I would have loved to have seen him make a statement, a public statement of kind of disavowing this ATF going around Congress and redefining machine gun.
Not gonna happen.
Right. He won't do it.
Mm-mm.
And I think it's arrogant of us to pretend like we dictate again what he says. We don't hold on. We don't go as a community. We don't go to The Rock and say, look, you didn't come out against blah, 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 whatever it is, nonsense. You didn't come out against abortion. So I don't believe in what you say. There are a small group of people that act like that, but we, what I'm seeing day to day, we're doing that with everybody in the gun. You didn't say exactly what I wanted you to say.
Well, I think it's different when you're a pro Second Amendment commentator would be like a very good way to describe him. He's a pro Second Amendment commentator who happens to be employed by the NRA. I think it's a little more realistic for us to expect him to have an opinion on this. And I think what people are frustrated with is the fact that it seemed like what was happening contradicted all of his previous beliefs, and now he was silent. And that can make a person look bad. And while we shouldn't tell that person what to do or how to think, I think we're allowed to have an opinion about that person, and we can have a negative opinion about it. And I did personally.
That's a very good point.
I always get upset. We get upset at what people do, but in this argument, a lot of times we're mad at people for what they don't do. They didn't even do anything. We're mad at them for them not being us. And I always feel weird when people are all charged up. That person didn't do what I wanted him to do.
Well, when your job description is basically, I'm a person who talks about the Second Amendment, like silence
on NRA TV.
I know, but silence can be deafening. So yes, you can be upset about people not saying something when you would expect. I mean, I was personally very upset about the NRA not saying anything. The day the bump stop ban came out, they were talking about their new cooler sponsorship. Like that was, I was offended by that. Like that was terrible. So, I mean, their silence was deafening.
So is it appropriate to say, and this is a question for everybody here, is it appropriate to say that a certain amount of infighting is extremely healthy? Do we check ourselves in that way?
Yes, absolutely. I'm of that belief. I think that iron is sharpening iron in that case. I think that you have to another random thing or way to say that is like burning off the impurities is I don't know, that one sounds a little harsh, but Yes,
It's a weird chemical fire.
Yeah. This like, yes, you have to like correct things. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm very passionate about this. You can probably tell.
Shawn, what do you think about this, man? Do you think it's appropriate to have this sort of checks and balances that will involve some infighting, but keep things healthy?
Yeah, to a point. I have a question for Kurt real quick. Kurt, if tomorrow you had to quit your job that you just, and I know your history, if tomorrow you had to close Blue Alpha Gear for something that you believed in.
So what you're saying is if tomorrow all the things were gone, he'd work for all his life
and he had to
start again
with just his children and his wife. He'd thank his lucky stars to be living here today. The flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away.
So yeah, I mean,
I don't know what that is, which is great. I'm glad.
I'll answer Sean's question. It's obviously that's a tough scenario to put myself in. I mean, I have the advantage of I've built a business around something I'm passionate about, so I get to be passionate about it, and I get to do as much politics or as little politics as I want, and I'm choosing as I go the right amount of politics that I feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I guess it's unfair. Your last job, if they did something that you felt was wrong, would you quit?
No, that's tough. I mean, I don't know that I honestly, I don't know that I'd quit the same day, but I might start looking for other work.
Right.
So because I got to sleep at night, right?
And you have a family, and you have responsibilities, and you have a mortgage, and you have people.
Yeah. So let's say I work for the NRA and drive a bunch of like Mercedes and BMWs, and I have a very nice lifestyle because of it. Like, but then at the same time, I feel like I'm going against all of the things that I believe in. I'd have a hard time sleeping at night.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've quit a job to stand up for things that I thought were wrong before. So I understand explicitly how difficult that is. But I think everyone just expects Colion Noir to just suddenly give up the life that he's kind of worked for and built. And listen, I used to be, when Colion Noir first came out, like I thought he was amazing. I was like, this guy, he is the voice of the Second Amendment going into the future.
I was very excited about him too.
And then he started working for the NRA, and I was like, will never listen to another word he says as long as he works for the NRA, because I know what the NRA is, and I accept that. And I didn't fault him for it. I was like, go for it, buddy. That's amazing. I'm glad for you, but you no longer hold sway in my psyche.
Sure.
So yes, I think it's valuable, John, to answer your question. And I apologize to interrupt you there. Kurt actually said something this morning that I thought was good when him and I were arguing on the internet. And it was that sometimes eating our own is good because it eliminates weakness. And that really struck a chord with me. I was like, I don't agree with everything that you're saying, but that is absolutely true. And I think that sometimes eating your own can eliminate kind of the weak from the herd. And I think that that's good. Now, the problem is that there's a lot of people with a lot of sway in this industry as content creators, and there's less elimination of the weak and just more elimination and divisiveness spread across it. I think it can be healthy. I think in a lot of ways, a lot of the things that happen in the firearms industry are not healthy. That's my quick thought.
Do you think it's perceived elimination of the weak and not actual elimination of the weak?
Perhaps.
That's a deeper thing. Real quick, I want to take a second here because we far missed the halftime. Totally missed it. Shout out to TACPack. Use the code TGCKNIFE, TGC Tool, TGC Grip over at TACPack.com. Get you some free stuff. There's a new multi-tool if you use the TGC Tool code. That's the best one. Do it, I promise. Also, check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/theguncollective. $1 level and $5 level. The $5 level will get you into a monthly gun giveaway, the Gun of the Month Club. All right, back to it. Now, I want to keep moving because we're plowing through this. We're hovering on this discussion about Colion Noir.
I have a question.
And the NRA. Yes, go.
Do all content creators need to get along with each other?
Absolutely not. Talking about that, that's a dynamite segue. Hickok 45 is has caught a lot of crap lately. Because they, and I say they because there are two people involved, they have taken payment from the NRA. I have no idea how much. I don't care because it's None of my effing business how much they got paid to support the NRA, but they have positioned themselves in a certain way. And I think it's really interesting seeing who is attacking them and why they're attacking them. Because I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, has Hickok come out and said that they are in total support of the NRA and the bump stock ban and all of those sorts of things? Have they said that? I don't know.
I don't know.
I think it's very interesting because what we end up with here is a bunch of creators that are now attacking somebody for their mere association and their open admission of where they stand in the industry. And I think it's really interesting. And is that classified as healthy? It's literally I've seen these things that are transpiring with Coleon and Hickok and others out there. I've seen these things axing friendships, and I think it's really, really interesting. I personally, I'm not offended by the fact that they've come out and said, hey, we are going to support the NRA, or we're going to work with the NRA. I'm not offended by that because I have a brain. And I understand that was their personal choice. And if they would like to leverage their audience in that way, because it's exactly what they're doing, they're leveraging their audience in order to make money with the NRA and potentially grow support for the NRA. If they would like to do that, that's on them. But they are totally going to have to deal with whatever those consequences are. But I think my point is the infighting, the attacks on them, I think are completely unnecessary, because all we have to do is go, you know what? I'm not going to watch. But instead, we are so enthusiastically in the other direction that we burn them to the ground. This is somebody that, again, the last 10 years, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, gun content creator on the effing internet. This is somebody that literally every gun enthusiast that is on YouTube is aware of. Every single one of them. Think about this for a second. Every single one of them is aware of them and has watched some of their content at some point. But burn them to the ground suddenly because they chose to support an organization that you slightly disagree with? I don't know. Is that what we should be doing? Should we be burning them to the ground? Johnny, any thoughts on this, man?
I'll say this. I think Sean's about to jump in. I think what's interesting is, to your point, Hickok's been doing this a long time. One of the members from his camp was a little bit very publicly vocal last night, and some just fighting over this. I just want to say this, speaking of the NRA and Hickok and the fact that Hickok supports the NRA, or he sends people to join there, is that I think we agree. I'm not some NRA guy. Like I think my membership's about a week past due. But I'll rejoin this year. It's fine. But I think we agree on a whole lot more than we disagree with. I think there's very little that we disagree with. I think we do agree with a lot more. As far as Hickok, I don't know, man. I don't know. But I do think it's interesting that he is the big voice. Sean, where are you at?
I was just going to say this. Like, I'm a member of the NRA. I still donate pretty regularly to the ILA just because I think that lobbying is... I said this on the last podcast. I'm sorry, John, but I think activism, lobbying, and litigation are the three tenets to fighting for the Second Amendment. The first two is basically us not being lazy and getting off our butts as gun owners. And I'm not saying this as anyone except for just a citizen of the United States that loves the Second Amendment and firearms. Like, we have to get off our butts, stop being lazy, stop thinking that posting on the internet is fixing things, because I just really don't think that it is. But then lobbying, it's making politicians afraid to go against the wishes of the constituents. Us as constituents, they're not afraid of us. They're not afraid of us at all. But they are afraid of the NRA. They're not afraid of Gun Owners of America. They're not afraid of the Firearms Policy Coalition, and they're not afraid of the Second Amendment Foundation for the most part. And that's fine. Like, I love those organizations. I donate to them as well. But I think all of us as content creators, as people, as human beings, we all want the same goal. We just have different opinions of how we will get to that goal. Military Arms Tribunal, like, he wants to burn the NRA down to the ground, and that's definitely like an option. I personally, that's not the direction I would go, but I don't know if he's right. I don't know if I'm right. I don't know who's right, But I think ultimately we want the same thing. We want the Second Amendment in this country. We want less restrictions on firearms ownership. We want to hold criminals accountable for the stupid things that they do. But for a very large part, I think that a lot of politicians are afraid of the NRA and the power that they wield at this point. Without that power, without that threat to these filthy politicians, what do we have without that threat? Litigation. Well, in Colorado, we were definitely active in the magazine capacity limits. We lost that. We lobbied for it really hard, and then we litigated. But litigation failed. We still have the limits. It's been 6 years now. So I think we all want the same thing. We just have different opinions of where it'll go there. I think that Wayne LaPierre and Chris Cox need to be released from the board immediately. I think that they've done good in the past, but they are way past their prime. They're not doing us any good anymore. We need new direction. But the NRA is a membership organization. It's only as powerful as its members. And, that's kind of how I feel. So to tear down Hickok 45 or to tear down Military Arms Channel, I think we're all kind of on the same side. We just have different opinions of the way forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, someone in the comments, 22 Cheapster, met him at your event, Shawn. Great guy. He said, no, he has stated several times that he does not agree with the NRA leadership, but we should join. I believe that is in reference to Hickok, which is good to know. It's good to know. I think, this we're kind of diving into us versus the NRA as a lot of these conversations degrade into. And I think we need to bring it on back and talk about the actual act of creators, content creators, attacking others. We saw an instance in regards to the TGC roundtable. I'll bring this up. The TGC roundtable happened in October of 2017. From there, there were some certainly negative things that were brought up, and I think what's really interesting is that there is a certain content creator that seems to benefit from burning others to the ground. And I would argue that certain meme pages are of a similar cloth.
Johnny.
But my point is, at what point, and I don't know that we are able to define this, at what point are we going beyond healthy discourse to a point where we are hurting ourselves and affecting ourselves in a negative manner? Where does that start to happen? Can we define that? What do you think, Kurt?
You can't define it. It's going to be a gray area. And I don't know the answer to that. It'll be different for everyone.
Yeah. Johnny?
I am a full-fledged card-carrying meme lord, and you all visit the internet. I am the internet. I was born into it and raised by it. And here's what I'm at.
Wait. Aren't you older than the internet?
Mm-hmm.
Johnny still thinks it's a series of tubes.
I'm sorry, y'all were breaking up.
Go ahead.
Here's where I'm at. Like the Benchmade thing hit last night, and I was on it pretty early. What I did is I said, hey, Benchmade's a bunch of idiots, and I hand out the information and then let people have a good time with it. And I think part of my job is bringing the conversation out there. I think where I draw the line, and Kurt's point's right. There's no, you can't define this, but where I draw the line is I don't come out hard. I make fun of people. I've made fun of every content creator that's out there. I've made fun of at length, but satire making fun is different than saying this person is bad. I don't have some list of the bad guys. We're all part of the 2A community. Burn that guy to the ground. Burn the NRA to the ground. You can't listen to this content creator because he's a paid shill. Those words don't come out of my mouth. My thing's more of just staying informed, satire, and laughing at the companies that screw up. I saw a great list today of all the screw ups from the last 2 years, from Daniel Defense to Springfield to X Products to Benchmade last night, and all of these, and Taran Butler, what happened year before last at Shot. And so there's no hard line. I just don't ever go all in on one thing that this person's bad and these people are fantastic. I think it's more gray. Shawn?
It's just that everyone takes themselves so seriously that no one can take anyone kind of messing with them or telling them that they may be less important than they think they are. And I think that that's kind of the deal. If I like it when people make fun of me, it's a good thing. I don't take offense at it. I like it when people challenge my assertions. Like I try to generate conversation by asserting points that may be less than popular and then talking about it. And I think that it's generally unhealthy. I don't take myself seriously, so it is weird for me to see when someone else takes themselves so seriously that they can't take a ribbing or any kind of alternative viewpoint of what they're doing.
Well, I hit you pretty hard last year, SHOT Show 18, when you rode that bull so pitifully.
It was
and
so sad.
It was so sad. If y'all didn't see it, Shawn rode a mechanical bull at a social club and a bar. And I rode you pretty hard. It was a funny video. I hit you, but that's pretty much how we got to be friends.
I wouldn't describe it that way if I were you.
We rode a bull at a bar.
No. You said you rode him pretty hard.
Yeah, I was the bull, apparently.
Yeah.
Can you all, this is a family event. Can you all not hold it together for 55 minutes?
No. No.
But yeah, I mean, that was the thing. Like, I love that because it reminds me that I am nothing and no one. Like that. I love that.
Okay. Let's take that idea. How do we encourage such discourse?
I don't know how you tell an adult that they are not the king of the world and that they have to take themselves less seriously. Like I don't know how you tell an adult how to do anything. Like if someone tries to tell me what to do, I usually do the exact opposite of that. So I don't know what.
But that's not. I didn't say tell them to do it. I said encourage the discourse. How do we, in our own words, lead this community to a direction of being the actual leaders that we need, the Batmen that Gotham City needs? Kurt and Johnny, you're both raising your hands hilariously.
Yeah, the thing that I did and is in 2018 I did Gun Gossip. It was a lot of fun, really solid. A lot of people were there, and a lot of people saw just nonsense making fun. I made fun of all three of you guys. And so actually,
no, you didn't.
Oh, I did. Actually, I kind of celebrated Kurt. Yeah. Kurt was in that outfit. But but the deal is I'm producing content now for pewpewtactical.com, and I did a video that came out Tuesday for them on the 365. That's a SIG. It's a fantastic gun. And so what's interesting is in that video, in the probably 30 to 50% of all of the comments that have come out on that video in the last 48 hours has been about gun gossip, not about the video, not about the gun, not about SIG. It's been about gun gossip nonsense. And I think part of it for me, how do we encourage that, is just leading by example and not taking ourselves so freaking serious.
You know, I'm gonna say something that I may not be favorable to all the content creators that may pick up on this.
Say it.
There is a new breed of content creator that has popped up in the last 3 years, and those people are leading from the front, whether we like it or not. And I'm going to name drop because I want you all to go and watch them and help them grow to new levels, because I want them to be at the front of this. I'm talking about John Lovell. I'm talking about Garand Thumb, and I'm talking about Talon Sai. Those three dudes are leading with fun. It's that simple. We have so many guys that, like, I've been at this for a while. Not TGC started about 3 years ago, but me personally, I've been at this for a long time. Shawn has been at it for a long time. And we know, through our interactions, there is a bunch of dudes that have been at it for a while, and there's a bunch of new people, and the new people are rocketing because they are not the same flavor, and they are lighthearted. They give incredible information, and they do it in an easy to consume way. And I think it's amazing. Hold on, Johnny. Kurt, you wanted to say something to my last point.
No, well, back what the thing you asked is, like, how do content creators guide the conversation? It kind of goes to what you're saying, which was, I was going to say, convince people to watch, like, do something entertaining, be relevant, make them watch, give them a reason to watch, and then while they're watching, that's how you guide the conversation. But if you're not interesting, like, you're not doing anything to help anyone.
I wasn't necessarily speaking specifically about content creators. I was speaking about community members as a whole. Like let's bring it down to a basic level. How do we all push in that direction?
Oh, that's easy. You don't know everything. You're not the most amazing human being on the earth. you are wrong about some things. Go into every argument with that mindset, and I think things just improve right off the bat.
Amen.
You know, there's I don't know if it came out of the Carnegie book or if it's somebody else that came up with this. Arguing is the most ridiculous thing you can do. It's not in those words, but arguing is a waste of your time. Arguing, you've already lost.
Yeah,
And that statement is people hate it because it means they're wrong. And that means that what they do for their entertainment anymore, you know, professional arguers on the internet, they are wasting their time, and arguing has never changed anybody's mind. But that's a fundamental human trait. I think we've kind of hit a lot of things tonight that are very important. And the thing I want people that are listening to the whole show to take away is that we, as a community, need to lighten the F up, stop taking ourselves so seriously while we, as a whole, have a very serious thing in our hands. That serious thing is very delicate, and we can lose it in a heartbeat if we are not careful. We, as a community of enthusiasts, the people listening here are not the fence sitters. The people watching are not fence sitters. You guys are all enthusiasts in some capacity. I want you all to understand that we are collectively holding up the Second Amendment, and we are carrying that torch, and we are moving things forward. And it is very important that we don't eat ourselves alive in the process. Is there anything you guys want to say before we bail, Shawn?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really, really well put, to be honest. Don't eat ourselves alive. And I am friends with a lot of people that don't share the same values that I do. I'm pretty libertarian guy. I'm pretty much, as long as what you're doing isn't interfering with my life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness, I think you should be able to do it. But I think people just need to take a step back, like get into healthy conversations with people and stop pretending like you know everything. Stop regurgitating the rote that you hear online and things like that. Actually apply critical thinking to your ideas. And sometimes the best way to do that is to sit down with your buddies and have a conversation on things that you may disagree about, because it really helps cement how you feel about a certain thing.
You know what? In regards to that, have a conversation with your buddies about infighting. Try it. Keep going, Shawn.
There you go, man. I was just going to bring up Kurt, like today and in the past. Today specifically, because it's in my mind. We both had very strong opinions about the knife drama that went on, and it was in different directions. And we talked back and forth. Neither one of us was trying to change the other one's mind. We were just like, that's an interesting point, but what about this point? And if we could all just apply a little bit of that and learn how to have a conversation and how to present your argument just a little bit better, or present your position a little bit better, it would be really, really valuable. Don't just get on there and be like, because this content creator said this is the way things are going to be. All gun laws are unconstitutional. Like, that's not the way the real world works. Sit down, think about it, figure out how you truly feel about it, and then stop trying to convince everybody that you're right and they're wrong. Just talk to them about what your opinion is and share your thoughts on an issue. And then I think by doing that, we get a little bit further as Second Amendment supporters.
I think it'd be really interesting if, and maybe Johnny and I can work on this. I think it'd be really interesting if we gave kind of class on human interactions and how to move a discussion forward. I know Johnny has actual professional experience in that way. And I think it'd be very interesting to see how people receive that information. Kurt, is there anything you want to say before we bail out tonight?
I would say a really good way to help the Second Amendment and make the progress that we're looking to make is to take some people shooting and try to influence the younger people and basically focus on some of the more efficient ways versus maybe just a lot of yelling on the internet. Focus on some of the stuff that's going to be really good, like plant the seeds, like with the younger people, take people shooting who've never been shooting before. Don't be just anger, fire, and brimstone. But on the other hand, I do get it when people get upset. I mean, a lot of it is I know you talked earlier about we shouldn't be telling other people like what to think or how to behave. But one of my concerns with that is like with the Second Amendment, all we're really trying to do is tell people to leave us alone. So that's why people really get passionate. They're trying to say, hey, leave us alone. We just want to be left alone. And I think that that's kind of fair too. That's really all I want, is to be left alone.
Sure. Johnny?
Tonight's all about infighting. Kurt, I'm going to start with you. I'm sick of your freaking belts. They are appropriately made. They're American made. They've got a fantastic warranty. They're comfortable and they look great. I'm freaking fed up with Blue Alpha gear. Shawn, I'm done with your freaking we like shooting and all of that funny ha-ha stuff and all of your huge variety of stuff at Firearms Radio Network. I'm done with you and your gorgeous face. I'm freaking done. And
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. I'm right. You don't have to tell me I'm right. We can assume it. Patton, I'm done with you, and for several reasons. One, Adam Kraut and all that freaking information that you drop off, you and all of your fight videos trying to toe the line and teaching us stuff, and your TGC news, the forefront of knowledge and information. I'm freaking done with all three of you white people.
Wow. Wow. I don't even know. Thanks, Johnny. Seriously though, this is a great discussion. I think it's very healthy. I feel like my opinions have been broadened tonight because, we as business owners, all of us, we tend to get caught up in our own worlds, believing our own stuff a little bit too much sometimes. And it's very healthy to have these discussions. And I'm glad that these fine gentlemen came along with us. To those of you out there watching, again, thank you for giving a damn about what we're talking about tonight. If you've got feedback, send it over to theguncollective@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you soon.
Bum, 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 bum.